Ready, set, spring into your Geauga Park district with 25 accessible parks close to home. Download maps of all the awesome trails you can discover and experience breathtaking nature in no time. Begin your adventure at geaugaparkdistrict.org.
We now know that this panic, in the middle of which we're trying to celebrate the lives of great Americans and their families, was fueled by models predicting unthinkable death in the United States and in the state of Ohio. We also now have a pretty darn good idea that they were all wrong, all of them. And it makes me wonder about governments and policy making and the extent to which we sometimes put on the blinders and sometimes lose sight of the forest for the trees. Maybe in this instance we would have done well to open our history books for a change. And what would we find? We would find in the year 1957 to 1958 there was a flu pandemic in the world. They called it, politically incorrectly, the Asian flu, okay? Killed 110,000 Americans, 110,000. That represented 6.2 ten-thousandths of the population at the time, which was 177 million Americans. In 1969 and 1970, we had a worldwide flu pandemic. And you know what it was? It was a coronavirus. They called it, again with a little political incorrectness, the Hong Kong flu. You remember that one? 100,000 Americans died. That represented 4.9 ten-thousandths of the population. And then here we come again now in 2020, and we have a coronavirus world pandemic. So far, we haven't quite gotten, the last time I checked, which was this morning, had not quite gotten to the 100,000 death level in this particular pandemic. But even if you get to 100,000, given our current 341 million people in this country, that represents 2.9 ten-thousandths of the population of the country dead. Every death is a crime. Every death is a tragedy. Make no mistake about it. 2.9 deaths is a tragedy. But we're pointing out here something from my perspective as a legislator and policymaker, is that if we had looked at this information and thought about it at the time, back at the beginning of all of this, instead of blindly following these models that turned out to be wrong, maybe we wouldn't have based our decisions upon this historical information, but it sure would have been useful perhaps to shape some questions. Like, when you're predicting 2.5 million Americans are going to die from this thing, how is it different, and why are the numbers so much higher than reality was in 1957, 1958, and 1969, 1970? When we, by the way, not a meeting was canceled, not a school was closed, not a church was closed, no one was sent home, and perhaps more importantly, no one was sent home, okay? And this is the result. So if we get a little better result with all of the hoo-ha that's gone on this time, was it really worth it, and was it really that important to do, is the question. I'm personally tired. I'm very tired. I'm dog-tired of hearing from so many people, so many corners of our society, that I have to prepare for the new normal. The new normal. We should all be focused on, we should all be striving for, and we should all be preparing for the true normal, not the new normal, right? And the true normal means, first and foremost, means a lot of things. But first and foremost, it means to me returning government to its proper place in our lives as Ohioans and as Americans. And we need to do that as quickly as we can. Certainly, the economic devastation that we've seen from government intervention, and listen, this is the other one that gets me. When someone says, the coronavirus has wrecked the economy. Have you heard that said? Nonsense. We did it ourselves. We did it ourselves. But we've seen that economic devastation. It's plain, it's widely reported, and but there are many other possibly bad scenarios that could come from this if we don't break out of it and follow the advice of developing appropriately a herd immunity to this disease. In the world of health, we could very well see significant spikes in suicides in the state of Ohio. I've heard it reported that in Ohio, phone calls, contacts to suicide hotlines are up 800% during the shutdown. 800%. And if even some of those equate to increases in suicides, we could lose more people from suicide this year in the state of Ohio than we do from the coronavirus. Think about that. Alcohol and drug use is up. When was the last time you heard a story in the media about the opiate epidemic? You think it's gone away? It's getting worse. You talk about a spike, watch out for that one. Mental health issues are always exacerbated by notions of loneliness and fear. And in this instance, it's going to be notions of loneliness and fear imposed upon us by our government, which has told us to get away from other people and which has instilled fear in all of us, reporting numbers that may or may not be accurate in terms of the true significance. Reporting numbers, speaking of which, I've tried and been denied the opportunity to get information from my Senate district, Geauga County, Lake County, and Portage County, about how many people have been tested and how many people have been tested positive and how many have gone to hospital as a result of this, so that we can locally here in the 18th Senate District have a half a sense of what are we really dealing with here, all right? Not in a prison in Marion and not in some tightly packed community someplace or a nursing home. And I can't get that information. Now, there's something wrong there, it seems to me. Education is another area where the education system did a wonderful job of kind of turning on a dime at the beginning of their closure to go online and do a lot of remote learning for our youngsters. And I think it's terrific. They did a great job. But make no mistake about it, there's more to going to school than sitting in front of a computer screen and doing your lessons. There's socialization that goes on in schools, for better and for worse, perhaps, depending upon your school and your family. But socialization goes on, and without socialization, that is a very difficult thing for kids to overcome once they finally get back to school. And however good the job they did, some kids are going to be behind in their learning. Some kids will be. Some kids, a lot of kids, I fear, are going to need remediation before they're caught up to where they need to be. And that's not an easy nor an inexpensive thing to do. And you know who has where the greatest impact of the closure of our schools is felt? It's felt among our neighbors and friends who have the least, the poorest, the least advantages, because they may not even have computers at home. And certainly they may not have parents who can afford to stay home and teach and help guide them through these lessons. So they're the ones that are most adversely affected, and I'm very concerned about that as well. But I think really that the biggest threat isn't the here and now, but rather the tomorrow. I am hard-pressed to think of a time when government got its hands into our pockets or around our throats and later let go. The suggestion that we won't let go and stop this until there's a vaccine and the virus is gone causes me concern that they never will let go. And that creates a time for great vigilance for two reasons. Number one, as far as I know, and perhaps the people with bigger brains than mine have a better idea on this score, but so far as I know, mankind has never developed a vaccine for a coronavirus. Not a flu coronavirus, not the common cold coronavirus. Never developed a vaccine. I wish them well, those people who are working hard on it, God love them, and I hope they do it. But it would be a first. And secondly, 50 years after the 1969-1970 coronavirus pandemic, that strain of virus continues to circulate in the world every flu season, continues to circulate. Now, the notion that we'll get back to normal, like I say, a true normal, hopefully, when the virus is gone, who's going to say when that happens? Or when we have a vaccine, well, what if we don't? So these are very, very somber pictures indeed. There are, in Columbus and around the state, many ideas floating around about how to end this situation soon, and more importantly, to prevent its recurrence. And I want you all to know that I'll continue to fight against the status quo and the new normal, and I will continue to fight for a true normal, and one that will reestablish, maintain, or enhance all Ohioans' confidence in our system of government.